Hey YouTube, I'm making a really quick, hopefully kind of quick tutorial about anime manga drawing. Now this is going to be a series. I'm not going to try to cover up everything in one video. It's really just going to be based off of the nose and how much the nose can really accentuate a character's definition, age, character type, a whole bunch of different things. And the animation or in the manga. Okay, so I'm making this video because I made a comment on a Jaza video. You're probably going to be watching this from that video because I'm going to be putting a link to this in the comments. So I made a joke in a comment like 3 weeks ago. I was like, just that I really didn't like his style on this, and it was really obvious he had no fucking idea what he was doing with Japanese style. Now the guy's a great artist, but it's just he's kind of dabbling in an area that he doesn't necessarily know anything about. And I mean that's fine, whatever gets whatever floats your boat, I guess. But I'm just gonna do this because I feel like Japanese anime style is more where I feel comfortable and where I think I do better. Now, of course, you might absolutely love his anime style, whatever. But, I'm just trying to give a different perspective and a different opinion of what makes anime. So, like I said, this is really just because this guy made a a joke about one of your videos tutorial coming out. It's coming out tonight. Okay, so let's get started. So really, this first nose, because I said I'm going to focus on noses, is kind of showing how bulkiness and definition is done in anime. It's done all the freaking time, but it's really meant for very particular character types. So, this one is more of a German, European descent character in a Japanese anime who's masculine and is definitely a tough guy, I would say, maybe a fighter, big bone structure. I put a definition line for shadow, which is very common in Japanese anime because it helps accentuate where the shadows are. Then I guess I would say it's really all about bulkiness, smoothness, not connecting, because when you connect in the wrong places, it changes the aesthetic values of the nose. It doesn't really make it bad, but it gives it more of a different appeal. And with shading, which I'm going to show on the last nose example, really makes it different on definition, where you don't even really need to connect lines, because it makes a big difference. Okay, now the second nose is about scale, and how scale makes a really big difference with a character, because this is a small scale. He's younger. He's more. It's just more of a youthful thing, I think. Defined nose ridge, all that beeswax. Now the third note is exaggerated, and this is just kind of showing that it's very common in anime and in manga for them to use over-exaggerated nose or eyes or some feature that really makes them stand out for what their character type is supposed to be. Now, for example, I see this kind of nose a lot within the overzealous royalty, or someone in the sense of power, or someone who's egotistical, who they're above, their nose is pointed up at the world, literally, in drawings. Now, granted, stuff like this is not in real life, but this isn't real life. This is a anime. So then the fourth nose is I'm showing how when you do angles, it really makes a difference on what kind of character you're drawing. Now, if I'm doing more of a round sense of nose, the character is more, I don't know how to, it's, fuck it, I don't even know what I'm saying. It's 3 a.m., people. Well, 4 a.m. almost, Jesus. So, angle shows more femininity, I would say, and it also gives more of a definition of maybe the person's personality type. Like when I think of someone who's more in touch with their emotions, more feminine, more I think of more curvature within their structure. They're not rigid. Get it? Like a rigid personality, rigid features. Then the fifth nose is absolutely the most simplistic nose. And this just goes where this is just an example of how little detail it really takes to make a nose look acceptable. This is 2 dots in a line. You really can't go wrong with that as long as you know positioning and you do a little bit of shadowing. I mean, that's super basic. Shadow, boom, light source is coming from, top, front, boom. Really simple. So, when it comes to everything in anime, not just the nose, it's really about knowing what parts to highlight and what parts to just not ignore, but to keep subtle, because when you add in final elements like skin color and the final shading and highlights, you don't really need lines in certain places to really make a definition of where a part of someone's body has different shape to it, where the cheeks are, because that's going to be more highlighted, where the area between the cheekbone and the nose is going to be a little bit more mild. It's not going to be popping out. It's not going to also be super shaded either. So, also in Japanese anime, they really don't do a lot of shading. It's mostly focused on just where the highlights and the main areas are, where the light's hitting, and then everything else can be kept really simple. Because, they got to do like 26,000 frames for an 18-minute animation, and they have 20 artists trying to correlate with each other, so they got to keep it simple. They got to keep it really to the point where everyone can work together easier. So they got to keep everything very basic, but they also got to make it where it's not looks half-assed. Because I've seen animes where I hate the art style, and you can tell they totally half-assed everything so much. This took me 5 minutes to freaking draw. Really when it comes to, I'm gonna make a couple other tutorials, and they're really gonna be focused on very certain segments. And I think in the 3rd or 4th tutorial, I'm gonna talk all about head proportion and drawing out the shape of the outlines. Because I really think when I started drawing, especially anime stuff, I didn't draw the whole face. I just drew like a nose or eyes, and I was like, I feel like I accomplished something, like just whatever. I don't like to put too much thought into anything with when I'm practicing. Of course, use your own face, because even though you don't look like an anime character, it gives you a good idea what parts to exaggerate. To if you were to think if you were a cartoon, look at other animes. I was watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I kind of liked Ling's hairstyle, where he had the bunch in the front. So I used that as inspiration for this guy. Now, obviously, this guy has a completely different hairstyle than he did, but that first front bunch was why I wanted the hair like that out in the front. That's just something simple and stupid. And the eyes, I kind of like these eyes more, because the eyes where it's completely shadowed out in the top where it's black, and then you see the iris, and then it's a little bit of color. It's so simple that it also kind of drowns out the other features of the eye, where it's borderline good, but can be borderline bad too. It's really treacherous waters, if I want to put it that way. And so I guess the one last thing I'll go over is I have a theory with noses and a lot of other features. Always think of things in groups. So if you're going to draw lines in an area, group them together. Because if you put too much space between lines and definition, and you kind of try to say, I don't want too many lines in one spot, it can actually make it look worse, because then the eyes where they're connecting the dots, they don't see enough definition in one area, and it can leave holes in the brain, and then it can fuck it up. So groups. And when it comes to noses, really, you can't go wrong. Just think beforehand what kind of character you're going for, and then that should really help you. So don't overly group. Don't make the nose too big or too small. Try to keep it smaller scale. I always like to use a rule of eye. Never make the nose definition really bigger than the eye. Now the nose ridge in that one, of course, is bigger, but I'm talking about the thickness and everything. As you notice, the eyeball is about the same size or bigger than it is to the tip of the nose to where you see the nostril areas. And I think that's really a good rule because it keeps all the proportions right. And, you know, I'll get to everything else like shading and everything else in a later video. I hope you guys enjoyed and you stuck with me this entire time. Have a good night, guys, and see you next time. And subscribe!